The forgotten hero the world should remember. The world has a way of remembering some heroes while letting others fade into obscurity. History often focuses on the loudest victories, the most celebrated leaders, and the moments that make headlines. But tucked away in dusty archives, hidden in the memories of those who witnessed them, are stories of individuals whose courage shaped events in ways that should never be forgotten. This is the story of one such person, a forgotten hero whose actions saved lives, altered the course of missions, and demonstrated a level of bravery that demands recognition. Imagine standing on the edge of a battlefield, chaos all around you, the sounds of gunfire and explosions echoing in your ears, and knowing that the survival of your unit rests squarely on your shoulders. This was the reality for the man we are about to meet. A soldier whose name never made it into the textbooks, but whose deeds were nothing short of extraordinary. In an era when technology and numbers often dictate outcomes, his story reminds us that determination, quick thinking, and sheer courage can make all the difference. Unlike many famous figures, this hero did not seek glory. He was a man of principle, a soldier who understood that true leadership is often silent and unseen. While others might have panicked or frozen under pressure, he remained calm, analyzing each situation, anticipating danger, and taking decisive action when every second counted. His ability to think under pressure and act decisively not only saved lives, but also prevented catastrophic losses during key operations. Accounts from survivors and comrades paint a picture of a man who combined intellect with instinct, strategy with compassion. He was not just a soldier. He was a protector, a guide, and in many ways the backbone of his unit. Those who served alongside him often credit him with keeping them alive, noting that his presence turned potentially deadly situations into manageable challenges. Even in the darkest moments, his clarity of thought and unwavering courage became a source of inspiration, proving that one individual can indeed make an outsized impact. Yet, despite all he achieved, history has been unfairly silent about his contributions. Official reports, mission debriefs, and historical accounts often overlook the quiet heroes who do not seek medals or public acknowledgement. The truth is, the outcomes of battles and the survival of comrades often depended on the very actions that never made it into official records. And in the case of this forgotten hero, his efforts were nothing short of life-saving, with consequences that resonated far beyond the immediate battlefield. One of the most remarkable aspects of his story is the way he navigated impossible odds. Imagine facing an enemy force that outnumbered your unit, with limited supplies and communication lines constantly under threat. In such circumstances, fear is inevitable, but so too is the need for action. This soldier demonstrated extraordinary resilience, using ingenuity, tactical awareness, and a deep understanding of both his environment and the human element to turn dire situations into victories. It was a combination of intellect, courage, and empathy that allowed him to succeed where others might have failed. His actions were not isolated incidents, but part of a consistent pattern of bravery and leadership. Whether it was rescuing trapped soldiers under fire, coordinating defensive positions with limited resources, or making split-second decisions that saved lives, he proved time and again that true heroism is about action, not recognition. Every choice he made was guided by a commitment to the mission and the people around him, reflecting a level of integrity and moral courage that remains inspiring to this day. Even after the chaos of the battlefield subsided, the impact of his deeds continued. Those he saved went on to lead productive lives, carry forward lessons of resilience, and contribute to their communities in meaningful ways. His influence extended far beyond the moments of combat, demonstrating that the effects of a hero's courage are not confined to a single place or time. They ripple outward, touching countless lives, shaping the course of events, and reminding us of the profound difference one determined individual can make. The story of this forgotten hero challenges our understanding of what it means to be courageous. It is easy to celebrate those who are famous, those whose faces appear on monuments, or whose names are etched in history books. But true heroism is often quieter, less conspicuous, and more enduring. It is found in the moments when someone chooses to act, not for fame or accolades, but because it is the right thing to do. In the case of this soldier, every decision he made, every risk he took, was a testament to that principle. As we explore his story, it becomes clear that remembering him is not just about honoring the past. It is about understanding the qualities that define a true hero. Intelligence, bravery, empathy, and an unwavering sense of duty are timeless attributes, applicable not only on the battlefield but in every aspect of life. By examining the actions of those who came before us, especially those who were forgotten by history, we gain insight into the kind of courage and character that can inspire future generations. So who was this soldier? What did he do that was so extraordinary yet went unnoticed by the annals of history? What can we learn from his example, and how can his story remind us of the power of individual action in the face of overwhelming odds? In the sections that follow, we will uncover the incredible feats of this forgotten hero, from battlefield tactics to life-saving decisions, and reveal how his quiet bravery deserves a place in the story of human resilience and courage. The battlefield is a place where ordinary men are tested in extraordinary ways. It is a realm where split-second decisions can mean the difference between life and death, and where courage is measured not by medals but by the survival and well-being of those around you. For our forgotten hero, this reality was not just an abstract concept. It was a daily challenge that demanded unwavering focus, resilience, and resourcefulness. Unlike the leaders celebrated in history books, he was not commanding massive armies or making strategic plans from the safety of a headquarters. He was in the thick of it, shoulder to shoulder with his comrades, often facing situations that seemed insurmountable. His story begins in a small, nondescript military unit, one that at first glance might appear unremarkable. But beneath the surface, this group of men was shaped by adversity, bonded by trust, and driven by the need to survive in hostile conditions. It was here that the soldier first demonstrated the qualities that would define his legacy. In early skirmishes, he exhibited a rare ability to anticipate enemy movements, understand the psychology of opponents, and coordinate his team in ways that maximized efficiency while minimizing risk. These early actions went largely unnoticed in the official records, yet they laid the groundwork for what would become a series of life-saving maneuvers on a larger scale. One particularly remarkable episode highlights his strategic brilliance and courage. During an operation that placed his unit deep behind enemy lines, they encountered a situation that would have paralyzed most soldiers. They were surrounded on three sides with limited ammunition and communication lines severed. Panic could have easily set in, but he maintained his composure. He quickly assessed the terrain, identified potential escape routes, and used his intimate knowledge of local geography to guide his comrades safely through enemy territory. His actions were not reckless but calculated, a combination of instinct honed by experience and a clear understanding of the human and tactical variables at play. Beyond tactical skill, what truly set him apart was his profound sense of responsibility for those under his command. Unlike soldiers who focus solely on accomplishing the mission, he understood that the people beside him were more than just numbers or assets. They were fathers, sons, and friends. He took it upon himself to ensure their survival, often putting himself at risk to protect others. Eyewitness accounts from surviving members of his unit describe moments when he carried wounded soldiers to safety under heavy fire, shielded teammates from sniper attacks, and even improvised medical assistance when medics were unavailable. In every action, his priorities were clear: protect life, preserve the unit, and achieve the objective. It is important to note that his heroism was not born out of recklessness. There was an intelligence and foresight that guided every decision. He had a keen eye for detail, noting subtle changes in enemy behavior, terrain, and environmental conditions that others might overlook. This ability to perceive patterns and anticipate outcomes gave him an edge in situations where brute force alone would have failed. It is this combination of intellect and courage that transformed him from a competent soldier into a hero whose actions, though largely forgotten, were nothing short of extraordinary. What makes his story even more compelling is the repeated pattern of near-impossible odds. On multiple occasions, he found himself facing situations where survival seemed unlikely, yet he consistently turned the tide through ingenuity and bravery. In one engagement, his unit was pinned down by enemy fire for hours, unable to advance or retreat. While others sought cover and waited for reinforcements, he devised a plan to create a diversion, using limited resources to lure the enemy into exposing their positions. This allowed his unit to escape and regroup, avoiding what could have been catastrophic casualties. These instances highlight not only his tactical genius, but also his unwavering commitment to those around him. His ability to inspire and lead without formal recognition also played a critical role in the success of his missions. Soldiers often looked to their leaders for cues in times of uncertainty, and his presence instilled confidence even in the most dire circumstances. He did not rely on fear, authority, or rank to motivate his comrades. He led by example, demonstrating calm, competence, and courage under fire. This quiet leadership fostered trust and cohesion within the unit, amplifying their effectiveness and ensuring that each member performed at their best. In many ways, his influence extended far beyond his immediate actions, shaping the unit into a more resilient and capable force. Despite the countless heroic acts, he remained largely anonymous. While official reports documented mission outcomes, they often failed to capture the individual contributions that made success possible. In the broader narrative of war, it is easy for such figures to be overshadowed by more visible leaders or by the scale of large battles. Yet for those who experienced his courage firsthand, his impact was undeniable. Stories passed down among veterans describe a soldier who could seemingly read the battlefield, anticipate threats before they emerged, and act decisively to protect his comrades. It is this combination of skill, bravery, and moral integrity that defines his legacy. As we examine his story, it becomes clear that true heroism is often quiet and unassuming. It is not about recognition or accolades, but about action, responsibility, and unwavering commitment to others. The forgotten hero did not seek fame. he sought to fulfill his duty with precision and compassion. His story challenges us to reconsider how we define heroism and reminds us that some of the most extraordinary contributions are those that occur outside the spotlight. In the next sections, we will delve deeper into specific instances where his ingenuity, bravery, and tactical genius saved lives and altered the course of missions. From high-stakes rescues to improvisational strategies in moments of desperation, these episodes reveal why this soldier deserves a place in history. By examining these moments in detail, we can fully appreciate the magnitude of his contributions and the enduring lessons his life offers to all who value courage, leadership, and humanity in the face of adversity. One of the defining moments of the forgotten hero's career occurred during an operation that on paper seemed doomed from the start. His unit had been tasked with holding a strategic position far from reinforcements, deep within enemy-controlled territory. The odds were stacked against them. Limited ammunition, fatigued soldiers, and a relentless enemy that had superior numbers and firepower. While many would have considered a tactical withdrawal, he understood that abandoning the position could allow the enemy to gain a critical advantage, potentially changing the course of the broader campaign. From the very beginning of the engagement, his approach was methodical and precise. He studied the terrain, identifying choke points, natural cover, and vantage locations that could be leveraged to the unit's advantage. He communicated clearly and calmly with his men, assigning positions not based on rank but on individual strengths and skills. By doing so, he ensured that each soldier was not just following orders but actively contributing to a coordinated defense. This kind of situational leadership is rare in high-pressure scenarios. It requires a combination of confidence, empathy, and acute awareness of human dynamics. As the enemy approached, it became evident that they were well prepared, using a combination of artillery, machine gun fire, and flanking maneuvers to try and overwhelm the defenders. Many units would have succumbed to panic, but under his guidance, the men remained disciplined. He personally took on high-risk positions, exposing himself to enemy fire to redirect attacks or draw attention away from more vulnerable comrades. This selflessness was not reckless. Every movement was calculated. Every risk weighed against the potential to save lives and maintain the defensive position. Witnesses later recounted that his presence alone seemed to steady nerves, giving soldiers the courage to hold their ground when the situation seemed hopeless. When ammunition began to run low, most units would have been forced to retreat, but he had anticipated this problem and devised an improvisational strategy. Using available resources, scraps of wood, metal, and even the natural environment, he created makeshift barricades and diversionary traps that slowed enemy advances. At the same time, he coordinated small, precise strikes that disrupted enemy formations and forced them into disadvantageous positions. The enemy, expecting a straightforward engagement, found themselves repeatedly outmaneuvered by a soldier they never anticipated and by a unit that seemed to act with the cohesion of a much larger force. The intensity of the battle only highlighted his extraordinary resilience. For hours, he operated without rest, constantly assessing the battlefield, giving instructions, and taking action where needed. Even when a grenade exploded dangerously close, injuring him slightly, he refused to withdraw or pass responsibility to another. Instead, he continued directing the defense, using minor injuries as a motivation to push even harder for the survival of his unit. It is moments like these that reveal the essence of true heroism. Courage tempered by intelligence, fear confronted with action, and personal safety subordinated to a greater purpose. Beyond his tactical brilliance, he also demonstrated an innate understanding of morale, which is often overlooked in discussions of battlefield success. Soldiers fight best when they feel seen, valued, and guided by competent leadership. He frequently circulated among his men, offering reassurance, encouragement, and practical advice. Small gestures adjusting a soldier's position to reduce exposure, sharing water or rations, or quietly praising effective maneuvers helped maintain morale and cohesion under extreme stress. These actions, though subtle, were crucial in enabling a small unit to withstand what should have been an overwhelming attack. By the end of the engagement, the unit had not only survived but maintained their position, inflicting significant losses on the enemy. The impact of his leadership was clear. A small, outnumbered force had achieved what was considered impossible, entirely because of the foresight, bravery, and ingenuity of one soldier. Yet in official reports, his contributions were barely mentioned. The mission was logged as a collective success, without recognizing the individual acts that made it possible. To him, this was of little consequence. His focus had always been on action and outcome rather than recognition. The lessons from this encounter extend far beyond the battlefield. They reveal how preparation, observation, and adaptability can turn the tide in situations where conventional metrics, numbers, firepower, and resources suggest failure. They also highlight the critical role of leadership grounded in empathy and trust, demonstrating that a leader's influence is as much about human connection as it is about tactical acumen. He did not command through fear or authority alone. He led by example, showing that courage and ingenuity can inspire extraordinary results even in the most desperate circumstances. It is also worth noting the ripple effect of his actions. Survivors of the battle later recounted how his decisions influenced their own understanding of courage and strategy. Soldiers who witnessed his composure and tactical insight often went on to emulate his methods, applying the lessons learned to future engagements. His influence thus extended beyond immediate survival. It shaped a generation of soldiers who would carry forward the principles of adaptability, resilience, and moral courage. As we continue to explore his story, it becomes increasingly clear that this soldier's heroism is defined not by a single act but by a pattern of extraordinary behavior under extreme pressure. Each decision, each maneuver, each personal risk taken to protect others contributed to a legacy of quiet but profound heroism. The forgotten hero embodies the principle that true leadership is measured not by accolades or public recognition, but by the lives protected, the missions accomplished, and the enduring example set for others. In the next section, we will examine another pivotal operation where his skills and courage again came to the forefront. This mission involved both tactical brilliance and improvisational skill on an unprecedented scale, highlighting how his abilities extended beyond conventional battlefield strategy and into the realm of innovative problem-solving under extreme pressure. By dissecting these moments, we gain deeper insight into why this forgotten hero deserves lasting recognition. The following operation showcased the soldier's ingenuity on a scale that bordered on the impossible. His unit had been assigned to secure a critical bridge, a key logistical point that the enemy was desperate to destroy. Losing it would have cut off supplies to Allied forces and potentially allowed the enemy to advance into strategically vital territory. Intelligence reports indicated that enemy forces were planning a concentrated assault, expecting that a small defending unit could not hold the position. Once again, the odds seemed stacked against him and his men, but this soldier had already demonstrated that conventional assumptions could not predict his actions. Upon arriving at the bridge, he immediately began surveying the surroundings, noting structural weaknesses, lines of sight, and natural cover. Unlike most commanders who might have waited for reinforcements or called for artillery support, he acted decisively, setting up a layered defense using both standard military assets and improvised resources. Barriers were constructed from debris and abandoned vehicles, creating choke points that funneled enemy forces into kill zones. He placed sharpshooters at elevated positions, ensuring clear lines of fire while keeping them protected. The precision of his planning reflected an almost intuitive understanding of both terrain and human behavior, predicting how the enemy would move and respond under pressure. As the attack commenced, his unit faced a relentless onslaught of infantry, mortars, and armored vehicles. Each wave of the enemy tested the soldiers' resolve, but under his calm leadership, they adapted with remarkable speed. He coordinated counterattacks that were both daring and highly strategic, using small squads to harass flanks while maintaining the integrity of the primary defensive line. What could have been chaos became a carefully orchestrated defensive ballet, where every movement was synchronized to maximize effectiveness and minimize casualties. His presence on the field, visible but not reckless, served as both inspiration and guidance, reinforcing the confidence of his soldiers in the midst of chaos. A defining moment occurred when a section of the bridge began to collapse under enemy bombardment. Most would have ordered an immediate retreat to avoid loss of life, but he quickly assessed that abandoning the position entirely would allow the enemy to gain control of a critical choke point. With an acute understanding of structural engineering and battlefield improvisation, he directed the men to reinforce the damaged sections using materials at hand, including sandbags, timber, and metal fragments from nearby wreckage. The work was done under fire, and each movement was calculated to minimize exposure while maximizing effectiveness. His ability to combine tactical decision-making with on-the-spot problem-solving exemplified the rare combination of intellect and bravery that defined his career. Throughout the engagement, he also maintained constant communication with higher command, providing accurate real-time assessments that were critical for coordinating artillery support and potential reinforcements. Despite the constant threat of enemy fire, he remained composed, balancing operational priorities with the immediate safety of his men. His approach emphasized adaptability over rigidity. Plans were never fixed, and every obstacle was seen as an opportunity to innovate. This mindset allowed his unit to exploit enemy mistakes, turning what could have been a straightforward assault into a series of setbacks for the attackers. Perhaps most remarkable was how he anticipated the psychological element of warfare. Understanding that fear and fatigue can undermine even the most disciplined soldiers, he frequently moved among his men, offering encouragement, reassurance, and practical advice. Small gestures such as sharing water, adjusting a comrade's equipment, or simply acknowledging their efforts reinforced morale and created a sense of unity. These human-centered leadership practices ensured that soldiers did not succumb to panic, maintaining the cohesion necessary for survival and effective defense. In many ways, his leadership was as much about understanding the mind as it was about mastering the battlefield. As the hours passed and the enemy continued to press, it became evident that the bridge would not fall. The soldiers' combination of preparation, adaptability, and courage had transformed a vulnerable position into a fortress defying expectations and frustrating enemy commanders. By the end of the day, his unit had held the bridge intact, inflicted significant losses on enemy forces, and preserved a strategic asset crucial for ongoing operations. Yet once again, official reports barely credited his individual contributions, framing the success as a general achievement of the unit. To him, recognition was irrelevant. What mattered was that the mission had been accomplished, lives were saved, and the strategic objective secured. The impact of this operation extended beyond immediate tactical success. The methods he employed, improvisation, precise observation, innovative use of terrain, and psychological insight, became case studies for military strategists. Soldiers who had served under him carried these lessons into future engagements, applying principles that blended conventional training with adaptive problem-solving. His influence, though largely unrecognized publicly, shaped the behavior and effectiveness of countless individuals who would continue to embody his approach to leadership, courage, and resilience. One of the key takeaways from this operation is the idea that heroism often exists outside of public awareness. While history tends to celebrate victories and high-profile leaders, it is the combination of foresight, courage, and ingenuity on the front lines that determines the outcome of critical engagements. This forgotten hero exemplified these traits repeatedly, proving that a single individual, when equipped with the right mindset and skills, can alter the course of battle and protect countless lives. In the next section, we will explore yet another defining mission where his unconventional tactics, sharp intellect, and unyielding bravery came together in a high-stakes scenario that challenged every limit of strategy and human endurance. By analyzing these moments, we gain a deeper appreciation of why this soldier's story deserves to be remembered, not as a footnote, but as an example of extraordinary heroism in the face of overwhelming odds. The following mission took place in a remote mountainous region, where the terrain itself seemed designed to thwart any military operation. Narrow passes, jagged cliffs, and unpredictable weather created an environment that was as much an enemy as the forces they were facing. His unit had been tasked with securing a vital supply route that had been repeatedly ambushed by enemy forces using guerrilla tactics. Conventional forces had already suffered heavy casualties attempting to navigate this area, and the assignment was widely considered almost suicidal. Yet, as always, he approached the challenge not with fear but with meticulous planning and a willingness to embrace unconventional solutions. From the outset, he understood that direct engagement would be disastrous. The enemy was familiar with the terrain, knew the likely routes of approach, and had established hidden firing positions that could decimate a column in minutes. Instead of following predictable paths, he employed an intricate system of scouting and reconnaissance, using local guides and his own knowledge of topography to identify hidden trails and vantage points. He trained his men to move silently, communicate through subtle signals, and maintain constant situational awareness. What might have been a chaotic, perilous advance was transformed under his guidance into a coordinated, almost surgical operation, where every step was deliberate and calculated. When the first signs of the enemy appeared, it became immediately clear that his predictions were accurate. Enemy snipers and ambush teams had prepared lethal traps along the route, yet instead of panicking or ordering a retreat, he directed his men to use the terrain to their advantage. High ground was seized to provide overwatch, natural barriers were used to shield movements, and improvised decoys drew enemy fire away from key positions. His ability to think several steps ahead allowed him to anticipate enemy behavior, turning ambushes into opportunities for counterattack. Each engagement was brief, precise, and devastatingly effective, demonstrating that careful planning combined with bold execution could overcome even the most favorable conditions for the opponent. During this mission, his ingenuity was particularly evident in the use of improvised technology. Without access to heavy artillery or air support, he instructed his team to create small but effective devices from everyday materials to disrupt enemy operations. Noise-making traps, signaling devices, and even rudimentary camouflage systems allowed his unit to control the pace of the engagement, manipulate enemy expectations, and create psychological advantages. These innovations were not textbook military strategies. They were born of necessity, creativity, and a deep understanding of human psychology in combat. The enemy, accustomed to predictable tactics, was repeatedly outmaneuvered and demoralized. Equally critical was his approach to resource management. Supplies were scarce, and the harsh environment exacerbated the challenge. Rather than exhausting his men or risking exposure, he implemented a system of rotation, ensuring that soldiers could rest, eat, and hydrate at optimal intervals without slowing the overall mission. He monitored morale closely, recognizing that fatigue and frustration were as dangerous as enemy bullets. By maintaining a balance between operational efficiency and human endurance, he preserved the fighting capability of his unit throughout a campaign that many believed would break them entirely. Perhaps the most harrowing moment came when the enemy set a trap that threatened to cut off the entire unit from retreat. A narrow pass, previously considered a safe route, was suddenly blocked by rockslides triggered by enemy sabotage. Trapped between cliffs and advancing forces, his men faced a seemingly impossible choice: fight in a confined space with minimal cover or attempt a perilous climb to safety. It was in this instant that his calm under pressure became legendary. Surveying the situation, he identified an alternate route, barely visible, that would allow the unit to bypass the trap. Leading from the front, he guided his men on this treacherous path, ensuring that every movement was measured, every risk calculated, and every soldier accounted for. This episode highlighted not just his tactical skill, but his extraordinary courage. While others might have delegated or hesitated, he personally took the most dangerous positions, distracting enemy forces and clearing the way for his men. His presence inspired confidence, reinforcing the idea that leadership is not merely a matter of issuing orders, but demonstrating commitment, resilience, and selflessness in the most perilous circumstances. By the time the unit reached a secure position, casualties had been minimal and the mission had achieved its objective. The supply route was restored, enemy operations were disrupted, and the strategic advantage returned to Allied forces. The long-term impact of this mission extended far beyond immediate survival. The techniques he employed, silent movement, terrain manipulation, improvisation, and morale management, became a model for small unit operations in hostile and complex environments. Training manuals would later incorporate these lessons, though his name remained largely absent from official accounts. Yet those who served under him never forgot the experience. Many credited their survival and subsequent successes to the lessons they learned from observing his decisions in the field. His influence spread quietly but profoundly, shaping the approaches of countless soldiers long after the operation concluded. Beyond tactical brilliance, this mission also underscored the moral dimension of his leadership. Despite the danger and chaos, he consistently prioritized the well-being of his men. No maneuver or engagement was deemed worthwhile if it unnecessarily risked lives. This principle, rare in high-stakes combat, earned him the unwavering loyalty and trust of his soldiers. It also demonstrated a broader philosophy. True heroism is not measured by accolades or recognition, but by the lives preserved and the impact on those around you. As the mission concluded, his unit had not only survived but turned the tables on the enemy, achieving objectives that had seemed unattainable. Yet in official records, the operation was described with cold bureaucratic efficiency, often minimizing the ingenuity and courage that had made success possible. He accepted this quietly, focusing on what truly mattered, that his men were safe, the mission completed, and the enemy checked. History may have overlooked his contributions, but the legacy of his actions lived on in every soldier who had experienced his leadership firsthand. This mission, like so many others, illustrates the essence of what makes a soldier unforgettable. The combination of strategic brilliance, adaptive thinking, selfless leadership, and unwavering courage. It's a story of ingenuity overcoming adversity, of ordinary men performing extraordinary feats under the guidance of a leader whose foresight and determination saved countless lives. The battlefield may have been chaotic and unforgiving, but in the hands of this soldier, chaos became a tool, adversity became an opportunity, and danger became a stage for heroism. And now, if you've been inspired by the story of this remarkable soldier, take a moment to honor those who risk everything in service to others. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue bringing you the untold stories of heroes who changed history in ways the world almost forgot. Turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of courage, ingenuity, and bravery that deserves to be remembered. As the dust settled from that mission, the full weight of what had been accomplished began to sink in. While official reports barely scratched the surface, the men who had served alongside him knew the truth. They had witnessed a rare kind of heroism, a combination of intellect, courage, and empathy that transcended the ordinary. It wasn't just that he had navigated impossible terrain or outsmarted a cunning enemy. It was that he had done so in a way that preserved life, instilled confidence, and elevated everyone around him. In the days and months that followed, tales of his resourcefulness and leadership circulated quietly among units in the field, shared in whispers over campfires and letters home, and in the camaraderie of soldiers who had seen death up close but survived because of one man's foresight. What set him apart time and again was his refusal to rely solely on brute force. Modern military doctrine often emphasizes overwhelming firepower, yet he understood that true effectiveness came from a blend of brains and brawn. When faced with a superior enemy, he would analyze patterns, study terrain, and consider the psychology of those he faced. His strategies were never static. They evolved with the situation, always adapting, always anticipating. And this adaptability created a sense of invincibility, not because his men were impervious to danger, but because they trusted him to find solutions where none seemed possible. One example of his ingenuity involved a critical supply drop. Intelligence indicated that enemy forces were lying in wait to intercept essential rations and ammunition. Rather than sending in a convoy that would have been sitting ducks, he orchestrated a diversionary maneuver. Using decoys, noisemakers, and calculated timing, he drew enemy attention away from the real supply route. Meanwhile, small teams moved with precision, delivering the supplies under cover of terrain and shadow. Not a single casualty occurred, and the supplies reached the troops who needed them most. The success of this operation demonstrated an often overlooked truth: In war, survival isn't always about who can shoot the fastest or carry the most firepower, but who can think fastest under pressure. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of his story is the human element. Soldiers speak of him not just as a commander, but as a mentor, a confidant, and a moral compass in an environment where moral clarity is often the first casualty of war. He took the time to know the strengths and weaknesses of each soldier, assigning roles that maximized talent and minimized risk. He encouraged initiative while providing guidance, creating a culture where mistakes could be corrected quickly and courage was recognized and nurtured. The result was a unit that functioned like a single organism, cohesive and resilient even in the most extreme circumstances. Of course, heroism is rarely without sacrifice. Throughout his campaigns, he endured the same dangers as his men, often placing himself in harm's way to shield others. There were nights spent in enemy territory under constant threat from sniper fire and patrols. There were days where rationing and fatigue pushed men to the brink, yet he maintained morale, using humor, encouragement, and personal example to keep spirits intact. And while many celebrated the end of battles and the securing of objectives, he often remained quiet, focused instead on the welfare of his soldiers and the next challenge ahead. Recognition, medals, and accolades were secondary. The true reward was the lives saved and the trust earned. Stories of his leadership eventually reached higher command, though often filtered through bureaucratic channels that could not capture the nuance or brilliance of his decisions. Yet those in the field knew the truth, passing on lessons learned in the shadow of enemy lines. These lessons influenced training, tactics, and operational planning long after the original events had faded from headlines. In this way, his legacy became both practical and symbolic. Practical because it directly saved lives and influenced strategy. Symbolic because it embodied the kind of leadership and courage every soldier aspires to but rarely achieves. In reflecting on his career, one realizes that heroism is rarely about individual feats alone. It's about the multiplier effect a single person can have on an entire group. He elevated those around him, made them more effective, more resilient, and more confident. Where others saw insurmountable obstacles, he saw opportunities for strategy, teaching, and ingenuity. Where others might have feared exposure or failure, he led from the front, demonstrating that courage is contagious. His story reminds us that the most extraordinary acts often occur not in isolation, but in the synergy between a leader and those who trust him implicitly. Even today, decades after the missions and battles, the lessons endure. Military historians study his tactics, and his strategies are often cited in discussions of small unit operations, guerrilla warfare, and leadership under pressure. Veterans who served alongside him recount their experiences with reverence, understanding that the real measure of a soldier isn't in medals or mentions, but in the lives preserved, the objectives achieved against the odds, and the intangible inspiration left behind. In many ways, his legacy is not only military but profoundly human, illustrating how courage, intelligence, and empathy can intersect even in the darkest theaters of war. Yet, despite all this, his name remains relatively unknown outside military circles. That is the paradox of his life. A figure whose actions changed the course of operations, whose leadership saved countless lives, and whose ingenuity redefined what it meant to be a soldier, yet who remains largely absent from public memory. Perhaps this is fitting. He fought not for fame, not for accolades, but for duty and for the people under his command. And in that sense, his story resonates even more powerfully, reminding us that true heroism often thrives in anonymity, in the quiet courage of those who act without expectation of recognition. As we close this chapter of his story, we should take a moment to reflect on the qualities that made him extraordinary. The courage to face impossible odds, the creativity to solve problems that seemed unsolvable, the empathy to care for those around him, and the wisdom to understand that the greatest victories often come not from brute force, but from intellect, strategy, and selflessness. It's a story that deserves to be remembered, celebrated, and shared, because it reminds us that even in the most harrowing circumstances, one person can make a difference that echoes far beyond the battlefield. If this story inspired you, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible accounts of unsung heroes who changed the course of history. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story of bravery, ingenuity, and the extraordinary courage that exists in the shadows of history. Every story you watch here honors the men and women whose actions made our world safer, and your support helps ensure their legacies are remembered.